Welcome back to Open Line. We are here with Dr. Reavis Mitchell, history professor from Fisk University, also chair of the State Historical Commission, where he served on that commission for 20 years. Let's go to the phones. Several calls. Let's go to Bill. Hello, Bill.
Hello.
Go right ahead.
Forrest here, the infamous owner of the Forrest statue. Dr. Mitchell, how are you doing today?
Fine. How you doing? We've shared some microphones in our time.
Is this Bill Doris?
Yes,
it is.
Well, thank you for calling in. Okay, go ahead.
Dr. Mitchell, are you familiar with the Black Voters League 1821?
Tell me about it.
Black Voters League was a group of blacks that met in convention in Memphis, Tennessee to form the Black Voters League, and by acclamation of the floor, they asked that Nathan Bedford Forrest be the keynote speaker for that convention.
Yeah.
There's a record at the Memphis Commercial Appeal in their archives on it if you care to look it up, but I've also got a copy of it, and I will get it to you just as soon as I can.
All right.
But the one thing that was glaring in that speech that Martin Luther King made was, "I've got a dream." He copied the keynote notes that Nathan Bedford Forrest had.
Mm-hmm.
So, frank business, I think he plagiarized that speech. It was great he made, but the bottom line of it was he really didn't write that speech.
Do you think it's important, Bill Doris, do you think it's important that he had this transformation for his statue to remain?
Absolutely.
You think that is important? In other words, if he didn't, then his statue should come down.
No.
So what are you saying?
Because?
There's two things about that statue where it sits. He was doing rear guard action, and he actually was on that property as a rear guard action to get the Army of Tennessee from Shires Hill back to North Alabama. All of that strip down through there is in the Civil War Trust. I can only wait till I hear about they want to do away with the Civil War Trust, and especially over at Fort Negley.
All right. Well,
there were several thousand blacks that were put in involuntary servitude up there to build that the Union put them to work over there and starved them to death. They're buried over on on the Elm Hill Pike, right along that fence road.
All right, well, let's talk about all this. Thank you, Bill Doris. Thank you for calling in. Bill Doris is associated with the statue right there on 65 of Nathan Bedford Forrest. When I say, I don't know if he owns the property or
he owns the property.
He owns that property. That's right.
I believe he paid to have that statue constructed and everything. Okay. Private funds on private property.
So he obviously supports that statue and supports Nathan Bedford Forrest being remembered as a war hero.
I think he's a Forrest historian. He's an advocate, so yes. And
so what do you? You would get both if you were at the State Historical Commission. This is what would happen.
Exactly.
You would have Bill Doris and you would have somebody like Lucy, and they would both be there and talk, and then you have to make a decision.
Well, the commission would hear that. Then the Monuments and Markers Committee will come back with a recommendation, and it will attempt to reflect what was, but what is. Hopefully, my commission is a very solid commission. We make sensible judgments. We approve markers and monuments, and I think that's the reason that everyone seems anxious to throw this over to the State Historical Commission. But we're going to, I close every meeting by saying, have we completed the work of the business of the people of the state of Tennessee? We're going to try to represent the business of the people of the state of Tennessee when it comes to monuments and markers within the law and within the preview of the state legislature and what they send us and what they have sent us.
Let's go back to the phones. Let's go to Irwin. Hello, Irwin.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello, go right ahead.
Yeah, the man talking about that, he's right. And that lady was talking about Bedford Forrest. Bedford Forrest did do things after he was a Klan leader. And just like George Wallace, it started off with his hatred. But he changed after, and everybody voted for him. I'm saying people change. And I don't like
them taking down those statues, because I'm a Civil War buff. I love to go places and look at them statues and read about the history of the Civil War, because all those men wasn't fighting just for slaves. They were honorable men. They were fighting against each other. I know that, but it's a lot more going on into that. People need to study the history of the Civil War instead of trying to take down statues. And that them statues have nothing to do with hate. Hates and the people that go on for, like he said, up to the 90s and on up through that. They the ones start all that stuff about blacks and whites and stuff like that. Like he said, about jobs and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I can go on and on and on. It's a whole lot of things that people need to understand about the Civil War. And I've read a lot, and I've been around monuments and Chickamaugas and stuff like that, read a lot about Civil War. The men wasn't dying for hate, they were dying for their properties, like he said a while ago. Them men, like if you go to a war, we have to go to war. If they draft you go to war, and you to get put out of the country, you have to be dedicated to your country or your side.
All right, let's talk about that.
Or your region.
Right.
And it was a regional war. It was North against the South. The slave issue is caught up in that. But I always tell people, slavery was not the cause of the Civil War. Freedom in the end of slavery was the great outcome of the Civil War. The Civil War was caused by a divided political system, a North and a South, and political leaders weren't willing to step back. The South understood that there weren't going to be more slave states. As the country expanded into the West, they were going to be slave-free states, and they were going to lose their position of control, equality within the National Congress. We tried to compromise. We tried to cut Missouri half in two to keep a balance, but it was going to disappear. So Southern political leaders took the South. John C. Calhoun from South Carolina led the way to succession, to leave. The South chose to leave. The people in the South are caught up in this. And I can be quite honest, the white people and the black people in the South are caught up in this. You know, I often tell folks as a social scientist, being in slavery was like being in a dysfunctional family. African Americans were caught up in a dysfunctional system, but it was the only system they knew. They didn't know that, you know, but even they were, by their white masters and the whites that came in, were fearful of the North. It was a sectional war. It was. And the last caller represents so many people who say they are Civil War buffs, they are Civil War enthusiasts. They look at the war from the military aspects. They don't say, I'm a slavery enthusiast. Unfortunately, you can't separate the South from slavery. But as I like to tell people, and the research shows, most Southern whites did not own slaves. Most Southern whites were poor because of slavery.
All right, we have to take a break. We're going to take a break, come back, be back right after this.